Before I had the amazing support from all you guys, before you guys allowed me to live my dream, I used to work as an operations manager for a company that sold process instrumentation equipment to industrial plants and oil companies. Now, during the 7 or so years that I worked there, I interviewed and hired countless people. Like most organizations, the company had a long list of policies. I think they called them standard operating procedures. They were available on the company intranet. When I hired new employees, I couldn't print out the list of all the policies because I would have needed a farm full of oak trees to come up with enough paper to print all of them. Not only was that incredibly inconvenient, it's also extremely damaging to Mother Earth, or Father Earth, depending on how our planet is choosing to identify. I hated these policies. Many of them I thought were redundant, but I understood why the company had them. They were a necessary evil. But that does not mean that I had to like them. Even as a child, I didn't like someone else making rules for me to follow, which is one of the many reasons this YouTube channel is the perfect job for me. I get to make my own rules. I get to make my own schedule. Now, of the thousands of policies that were listed on the company intranet, you know the one thing that was not listed? There was no policy that outlined an expectation for you to show up to work. Why? Why was that policy not listed? Because it was understood, it was implied. It's one of those things that goes without saying. When you take a job, when you agree to accept someone else's money in exchange for your valuable time, the implication going into it is that you are agreeing to show up to work. It's something that doesn't need to be explained. You show up, you get paid. You don't show up, your ass gets fired. Millions of people working in millions of jobs throughout America, they seem to understand this simple concept. But there are employees of one organization who just can't seem to grasp it. There are employees of one organization that seem to think they are entitled to millions of dollars without having to show up to work for large portions of their season. Of course, I'm talking about the National Basketball Association. For years now, one of the biggest complaints in the NBA has been the entitlement and lack of effort given by star players during the regular season. Well, KC, is this similar to the entitlement that we see in the WNBA? No. Now, I don't agree with NBA players feeling entitled, but at least I can somewhat understand why they feel that way. I can understand why a team like my Pelicans would want to utilize load management with Zion Williamson. I can understand this perceived need to rest him during the regular season so he's available for the playoffs. The playoffs in the NBA, they generate millions of dollars for a franchise. If you win the NBA Finals, you're talking about the possibility of hundreds of millions of dollars being generated for a team. In the WNBA, the dumps that manage to make it to the playoffs, they're not generating any extra revenue. Outside of the participants, no one else really cares who wins access to the golden toilet during the offseason. But after years of hearing complaints from NBA fans, Adam Silver has finally decided to listen. Adam Silver has finally decided to step in and make one decision that will benefit fans of the NBA. Well, at least that's what Adam Silver wants you to think. The sports commissioner that looks more like Marvin the Martian than a human being, the commissioner that gives the Star Trek virgin Mike Freeman plenty of wet dreams, he proudly announced yesterday the end of load management in the NBA. Starting this season, NBA teams and players, they will be required to follow the player participation policy. In short, this policy makes it a requirement for healthy NBA players to actually show up to work. No more collecting millions of dollars to rest your bruised caboose. No more collecting millions of dollars to miss regular season games because your emotions were triggered by Donald Trump. Orange Man bad. Starting this season, next month, NBA coaches will not be allowed to rest more than one star player on any given night. Well, KC, that's rather vague. What is the definition of a star player? Well, I'm glad you asked because Adam Silver has you covered. A star player is defined as any player who's made the All-NBA team or has been voted by the fans as an NBA All-Star in any of the last 3 seasons. Now, as of right now, this new policy covers 49 players in the league and about half the teams. According to the alien, this decision was made for NBA fans. Ultimately, this is about our fans. The NBA front office has realized that we have taken load management too far. Yeah, sure, Marv. Now, there's no doubt that fans of the NBA like myself will benefit from this new policy. One of the reasons I am always so hesitant to attend regular season games, I never know who's going to show up, who's going to be playing. I don't want to waste $500 on tickets to see the Lakers in New Orleans to play the Pelicans, only to find out at the last minute that Anthony Davis will miss the game because he ran out of Midol. Zion Williamson will miss the game because David Griffin is putting him on a minutes restriction, and LeBron James is going to miss the game because he's attending a defund the police meeting. For years now, NBA fans have been absolutely ripped off, but that's okay. That's okay. Marvin the Martian has stepped in to be the voice of the voiceless. This is pure speculation on my part, but the implementation of this new policy, it has absolutely nothing to do with NBA fans. I'm going to tell you why I think Adam Silver decided to implement this policy. Load management really didn't become popularized in the NBA until the last 5, maybe 6 years. After Kawhi Leonard load managed his way to a title in Toronto, other teams and players started to believe in load management. Now, the NBA front office, they had no reason to care at the time. They still had many years left on their current broadcast rights deal. The league was locked into contracts with the networks. Whether star players played or not, the NBA still receiving billions of dollars. But guess what expires at the end of the 2024-25 season? Guess what is coming up for negotiation basically right now? The NBA's broadcast rights. The timing of this new policy, this is not accidental. Right now, the NBA needs its fan base more than ever before, which is kind of ironic when you think about it, since the NBA has been at war with its own fan base for the last 3 years. All of a sudden, when regular season ratings are in the pooper and the league wants to increase their broadcast rights, Adam Silver sends a nice virtue signal to the fans, pretending like he really cares. But this new load management policy, this is not about us. It's not about NBA fans. If this were about us, Adam Silver, he would have addressed this issue years ago. This is all about the networks. The fans are not the only ones tired of the NBA. I think the networks are actually more pissed off than the fan base. Both have been getting ripped off for years now. But the broadcast networks, they have been paying billions of dollars for a substandard product. They have been paying billions of dollars for regular season games that don't feature star players. Going forward, all healthy star players are required to suit up for nationally televised games. They will also be required to play on the second night of back-to-back games when the game is on the road. For example, last year, the Warriors trio of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and the insufferable Dre Green, they all played in a home loss to the Indiana Pacers. Their next game was on the road in Salt Lake City against the Jazz. Now, the equally insufferable Steve Kerr, he rested all 3 of his star players for that game in Salt Lake City. When you think about it, on the surface, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you play your stars against a non-conference opponent and then rest them for a conference opponent? But under the new rule, the insufferable Steve Kerr, he would have to rest his players for the home game, or he would have to do the unimaginable and make them play both nights. But don't worry, Stevie, don't worry. I do have some good news for you. There's no language in this new policy that prohibits you from using the NBA platform to fight the good fight for causes that are important to you. Causes like gun control, defunding the police, and your personal favorite, advocating for clean air to influence the growth of the supersized cucumber. This new policy, it also prohibits NBA teams from tanking. Last year, Damian Lillard, he set the last 3, maybe 4 weeks of the regular season because he had a bobo on his leg. My inside sources tell me this bobo was actually a new tattoo of the original bobo, Bomani Jones. Under the new policy, that is no bueno. NBA teams are no longer allowed to tank. They are no longer allowed to accept money from their own fans while putting scrubs on the court to not entertain them. The question, though, going forward, the big question, Is this new policy going to work? Will it get rid of load management? Will this new policy be effective? Now, if David Stern was still alive and running the NBA, I would say yes. David Stern did not fuck around. He didn't let the players run the league. But with Adam Silver in charge, I've got my doubts. First of all, in order for this policy to be effective, it's got to be enforced. We have already seen in the past how Adam Silver bends the knee to his players. Remember the bubble in Orlando 3 years ago when Adam Silver allowed his players to turn the bubble into a shrine to mythical racism? You guys remember that? And number two, the fines in this policy for teams who violate it, they're not harsh enough. First violation, teams fined $100,000. Second violation, $250,000. Third violation, $1.25 million. All violations after that, $1 million fine. In my opinion, the first violation should cost $1 million for the team. Second, $3 million. Third, $5 million. And if you want to keep violating the policy, the league will bankrupt you. $100,000 for an NBA team, that's like pennies. That's nothing to them. And what about this? Where are the fines for the players? I didn't see anything in this new policy that stated that players will be fined for refusing to show up to work. If Kawhi Leonard is refusing to play, why should the Clippers be the only ones fined for it? I'm not a doctor, but I think one thing that we're going to see if this policy is fully implemented, I think we are going to see healthier players, less injuries. I think one of the reasons we have seen so many injuries in the NBA over the last few years, the players aren't playing enough basketball. Now that the league is pushing for them to play all 82 games, or at least most of them, I think we could start to see injuries decline here. That is, if the policy is enforced, and that is a big if. Like I said, I've got my doubts, but maybe Adam Silver will prove me wrong. What do you think? Adam Silver implements a new policy which essentially bans load management in the NBA. Do you think he will enforce it? If the regular season is taken more seriously, do you think it's going to boost ratings for the NBA and the networks? Are any of you guys still watching the NBA? I mean, me personally, I love the NBA, but if my Pelicans suck, I got to admit, I do have a hard time getting invested in the regular season. What about you? Let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.